Hey, this is Pete from 21st Century Prepper. Today's podcast, we're going to be discussing why prepper groups fail, both online and in, I guess, real life prepper groups. And we'll be discussing how to get your friends and family more on board. Maybe not 100%, but hopefully they won't look at you like you're crazy. And we may touch on living your life. That it kind of has a little segue into all that. And why we do this in the first place, So tonight we have Skip with us.
Good evening, everybody.
And Tony.
Hello, everybody.
Happy birthday, Tony.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep, happy birthday, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And Richard, who I'm going to apologize. Last podcast, I called him Terry the whole damn time. So it's Richard. How's it going, Richard?
I'm going great, man. You can call me anything you want to, as long as you call me for supper. I'm good.
The first part of that, we're going to touch on why prepper groups fail. Other than the page, I'm not in a real group. I have people that I would pull in with me if something was to happen, and I think they would jump on board right away. I've picked people that I know personally in my life that I'm acquainted with, friends with, whatever. I would extend an olive branch to them if something was going on, that kind of thing. So I don't have a group per se. I'm not owning 100 acres with someone else and that kind of stuff. I think the major reason in a real life group would fail would be for any reason that anything would fail, be it a business or a club of some sort, whatever, or just friendships. I think it's ego. I think people financially would be an issue, and also people that just aren't taking their weight of the situation, and someone is going to end up doing more than anybody else. So I think the egos will get involved. Financially, someone's going to have a bigger burden than the next person, and for whatever reason, it could be a legitimate reason, like I want to random names, but then there's people I know. Abe is just turned out to be a scumbag that we thought was actually a good guy. And he never paid his dues if you set up a due type system or whatever. Or maybe it's someone who they lost their job. They can't do it anymore. They can't submit their monthly dues to pay property tax or whatever it would be on the property. That's, I think, is the three main reasons why a physical, real life group would fail. You guys have any beyond that, or agree or disagree?
Well, I agree with most of that, but there's ultimately the power hungry, the struggle for who's going to be in charge is another big thing I would like to add, or at least I feel. Yeah. You mean, I'm prior military, so I've got some of my leadership experience with that, but you might be a police officer that was a chief of police, and then you get into a situation where you need some kind of authority. Who's in charge? For a while, people will work together, but eventually they're going to butt heads. I mean, someone's going to start fighting and saying, well, I'm in charge. Not to go to such an extreme, but because I don't believe in the whole zombie stuff, although that'd be fun. The situation like the Walking Dead series, even though how far-fetched that is, you've got the two big groups that rightfully should be one big group, but who's in charge, whose way are they going to do it? And you got two bosses and they just can't come together. So the power-hungry thing is always going to be a factor, too.
Yep.
I would think that a big one would be some people wanting to be very gung-ho about it and other people wanting to be very relaxed about it. I mean, some people want to live prepping 24/7, and some people want to go buy 2 cans of beans every week. And I would think you would need to set some real heavy ground rules ahead of time to keep one person from saying another person's not pulling their weight or they're not taking it serious enough,
Yeah, I agree with that. How about you, Richard? What do you think?
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think the last 15 or 20 years, people have lost the ability to come to a consensus or agree to disagree. Somebody's got to be right. Somebody's got to be, and I mean, the other person's necessarily wrong. And they don't know how to work together. I work in an environment where I have to work with people all the time that I absolutely can't stand. You have to find out how. You have to figure out how. I think we've lost some of that maybe, and that may be part of it. How do you negotiate a truce when you're mad?
There's a lot of truth in that. I mean, you look at politics discussions online, and if you disagree with somebody, you're automatically whatever. You know, it's an attack instead of just discussing it like two adults. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's you say, I'm kind of middle of the road, but if you're talking to someone who's on the right, they think you're on the left, and if you talk to someone on the left, they think you're on the right. It's like, why, we're kind of all there, aren't we? You know?
Yeah.
My big saying, I can't remember when I first started saying it. The world's not black and white; it's a shitload of gray. I think that has something to do with it. We all can't we all just get along? So, what about online groups? I think it's pretty much the same there too.
Yeah.
Maybe not financially as much, but just the ego and the who's in charge and
Politics.
and politics and differences of opinion and.
Well, everybody's ego is magnified, or increased at least 10 times online. I mean, everybody is the strongest, most intelligent, most experienced, logical person in the world with a keyboard in front of them.
Yeah. Well, I know I am.
Yeah. Exactly.
Instant asshole. Just add keyboard, right?
I'm the first person in the world to tell you that I'm no expert in anything. I can tell you that much. I just like to think. Other than running this page and being on other pages, I've never been in a group that's like a 3%er group or something like that. I've dealt with people that have been in those kind of groups, and it kind of comes across as the same as anything else. It's just people just disagree and it falls apart, and people take sides, and it just gets stupid and ugly. And I don't know how to fix that because.
I think it goes back to what Richard said. People just don't know how to disagree with one another anymore without attacking one another.
Yeah, and you need to have differences of opinion because you don't learn anything new. You don't learn from what you do correctly. You learn from what you do wrong or someone else did wrong. I've learned much more stuff from other people than I have just from myself doing it because you can only do so much stuff in a 24-hour period, you know. But to listen to other people and their experiences, you go, hey, cool. And then you remember it. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think groups might be changing and evolving all the time. And I've, back to the online commentary, there's one person I know that I did not meet online. The rest of the people that I know and that I've gone to visit, I've met online. And all of us have loosely agreed to say that if something happens, if you need to go north, south, east, or west, we have a direction to go because that's how far apart they are. And that provides some security. And we have an agreement that says you bring your stuff because we're not going to support you, but you do have a place to go.
Yeah, I've typed that. Hey, come here, but bring your stuff. I've typed that up for a couple people.
Yeah, good skill sets. Good mindset, all good things, but there just really aren't that many people that live close to you that are going to fit.
Exactly.
So, so we go visit, we spend time together, we spend time together online, we share commonalities, we like talking to each other. That's going to make something easier if you're living with somebody. That's something that I don't see talked about as a typical group per se because it's not everybody gathering at one point as a group in a location.
Yeah. And it's also not the initial plan. I mean, our initial plan isn't for the admins here all to meet up somewhere. It's just not feasible. But if you're in my neck of the woods and there's a disaster that happens and you can't fly out, yeah, you got a place to stay here.
Right.
I'll approach cautiously and.
You'll never see me in that snow-covered mess you got up there, buddy.
That's right, hands up. And I'm not. One of the guys that has said, you're welcome to come. Here's how you do it, so that nobody gets hurt trying to get here. And oh, by the way, you're welcome to rest up and resupply and move on, or you can stay, whatever you have to do.
I actually gave a couple people a code word just in case. It was kind of tongue in cheek, but
the chair is against the wall.
Say the code phrase, be like, Hey, okay. So, well, let's move on to our next topic, and that is a tough one. It's brought up constantly on just about every page I'm on, every group that I'm in, and that is how to approach your family and friends and how to get them on board with prepping. That's a tough one. For one thing, we don't know your family and friends. That's the thing. You're the only one that knows how to approach them the right way. But some of the examples I use are weather. Obviously, that's a big one. Some social issues, like one I always use is look at a Black Friday video. Just pull up some Black Friday videos and watch people kill each other for a toaster iron. Also, well, like Katrina and Sandy videos. The Sandy video where the woman is begging the politicians who are standing quite a ways away from her, which is probably a good idea on their point, while she's begging them for stuff. Bring us, water, get our electricity turned on, whatever. Those are the ones I've used, and also just common sense talking about when there's something going on, like the wildfires and the ones up in Canada and the ones in California, and the ones out east. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
Florida last year.
Kentucky and Tennessee. When was that? 2 years ago? But to have Tennessee and Kentucky on fire and whole towns burning down, that was an eye-opener for, I think, hopefully a lot of people. So how do you guys approach it?
I have no good advice on this subject because it's a constant battle at my home. I get very tired of being accused of being paranoid, and then you always hear the Walking Dead references and the zombies, and ugh.
Well, I think the best example is just using disasters, kind of like you just said, Pete. I mean, I know right now is in the Maryland area, there's a lot of people without power. So what I did with my wife is, what really got her on board was I told her, we don't have to prep for the end of the world. That's crazy. But we do live in an area that disaster can strike in the form of ice storms, heavy snow, and we should be prepared for that, whether it's small stuff. 2 years ago, we had snow so bad that we couldn't get supply trucks in for almost 2 whole months. It doesn't take long for people to start panicking once the grocery store doesn't get their supplies in. In an area like where I'm at, we only have 2 grocery stores in town. We have a main one, and then we have a Save-A-Lot. Those shelves can empty in a day. And if you're not prepared in a little bit like we are, like I have a lot of extra rice-based freeze-dried foods, which, if we're out and moving, they're not good for you. You're not going to have your fat. You're not going to have your calories. But if you're sitting around the house and you just need something to eat, and you have no electricity and no food, but you have a way to boil some water, I don't know. That's how I got my wife started, because of that one little disaster, and she saw the importance of having stuff on hand. And
I tell you, there's nothing like being hungry, because when you're hungry, that's all you can think about is that you're hungry.
Exactly.
Yep. Or sitting in the dark going,
yeah,
I wish we could have power. How do we get power?
Yeah, those little disasters, those are the best way to get your family on board. And I think you're going to have those family members that are stubborn. I think one of the things that did get my family or my wife on board was not only did we have that, entertainment, like we have laptops and tablets, and I had backup ways. I had a little solar panel thing that could just enough to recharge the computer and my tablet. So not only were we sitting at home with food in our bellies and a way to stay warm and have light at night, we also had entertainment, and that helps the morale a lot.
Oh yeah, I just posted that prep tip of the week today. Entertainment to keep the mind functioning, whether it's you're busy doing stuff or sitting around doing nothing. You got to keep the mind going. You need books to read or cards to play or something. Sitting around the house in the dark being bored is sucks. So that's a good way to get people on board too.
But your cell phone's not going to work after the power goes out, Pete. Don't you know that?
I'm commenting about that right now on the Facebook page. You guys asking about batteries, so I'm commenting right now.
Richard, you got anything to add to this? Because I think you said your family is on board with what you do down there.
Yeah, it is, but I went about it a little bit differently. One, I don't really talk about what I do with people who I haven't already decided are a whole lot like me. You can hide forever, but you can only be visible once, and they get their ideas, and especially at work, it's a really iffy thing to do. But with us, I invited family members to go to support meetings or prepper meetings, and with the promise of dinner afterwards. We went to ham classes, and we always went out to dinner, had a date afterwards. I put it with other things, and that made it easier.
The only thing I would worry about there is you go into a certain type of prep group meeting or something, and it's all conspiracy theory, EMP, Alex Jones type stuff that could possibly turn somebody off pretty heavily.
Oh, it might. In my case, I preview stuff before I already know what I'm walking into before I walk into it. It's not walking in cold, both of it.
I got nothing.
Okay. Hang on. Okay. Trying not to come across the big thing is when you're trying to convince the family or friends is trying not to come across as the tinfoil hat wacky dude. I mean, Doomsday Preppers was a kind of a cool show, but then they took the extreme, and editing, of course, is an issue with shows like that. And the producers are like, do this instead of that. And there's written accounts of the people that were on the show are like, they totally had us do something that we wouldn't have done or was out of character or whatnot. So when people bring up stuff like that, it's just the best way to do it, I think, is just to deflect it and like, I'm not prepping for that, I'm prepping for this. And it's much easier when you use real world reasons. You could be deathly afraid of Yellowstone exploding. I mean, that could, bless your heart, you mean so well, like I said in the last podcast. But if you're trying to convince your wife that you need to have plastic to cover the windows, and your excuse is Yellowstone, it's not going to fly, especially if you live in Georgia. So, or upper New York State. Not to pick on you, Tony, but
that's okay.
So what excuse could you use to have plastic to put over the windows? Whatever excuse you have. Forest fires out east, out west, big thing because the smoke could get in your house. Cover the windows with plastic. So there you go. Use it to deflect it off, and use the excuse for something else. People are deathly afraid of a nuclear war with North Korea. I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong. I don't know. No one knows. If we knew, if you know, please tell me ahead of time. But you could use any excuse for having more food on hand, and the same thing, you need plastic to cover your windows and all that kind of stuff. So use real world stuff that happens. House fires and unemployment. Unemployment's a big one. What if I lose my job and I'm out of work so why don't we stock the pantry a little bit so we have a little extra food on hand? I was unemployed for a short period of time, and I went through, I had a healthy supply of food at the time, and I used that while the money was not coming in. So that's a good way to argue the point with your spouse. Luckily, my spouse is on board somewhat. It teeters back and forth. I've said it on a previous podcast. I can't make an excuse to get a gas mask or body armor. So I don't have those yet. Other stuff, camping gear, if you want to say it that way, survival knife, hatchet, axe, whatever you want to call it, cooking sets, that kind of stuff. Hey, we're going to go camping. Let's go camping. That's my excuse. Extra food in the pantry. We like to cook, and we don't like to. She doesn't like to shop, so that's a really good one. She hates shopping, so fill up the pantry. So, I was reminded. We'll go back to the prepper group thing a little bit here. I was reminded by Crystal that also another reason that prepper groups fail is because of unrealistic expectations. And that kind of falls in the category of who's going to get this done. Bob is the only one doing it. Everybody else, or Bob and Chris are the only two working on it, and the other four people are and they want to do this and they want to do that. They want to get a bunker going. And they build up these unrealistic expectations of this grandiose scheme of whatever, and then when it doesn't come to fruition, stuff starts to fail, and people get attitudes about it, and then it just crappie flops from there. So,
along the lines of bringing people on board, I will say one thing that, in my opinion, this is just me. It could be, maybe it's not a popular opinion, but I am the man of the family, and I have a responsibility to provide and protect for them. I don't need to ask their permission to do that. And whatever I think needs to be done, I'm going to do. I'm not going to make excuses. I hope that they come along and do, contribute something, but I still feel like I have that responsibility as the head of the household. And that may not be really popular today, but that's the way that I approach it. So I carry on, and people come on, and as you set an example, they actually kind of start to follow, as you said, a good example. You don't argue about it. You don't push anybody. You just running out in front of them with a flag on the end of a pole, and they can choose to follow or not. It's still my responsibility. Maybe that's a mini rant, and I don't mean to be over the top on it, but that's one of the things that keeps me going.
No, it makes sense. If you strongly feel about something, then if you go ahead and do it and start doing it, as long as it doesn't compromise your safety of your family, or especially financial safety, that makes sense.
That a relationship. I mean, you don't want to break relationships either.
Yeah. I've seen that where people have asked, how do I get my wife on board, or how do I get my fiance on board, or whatever, and people have responded, divorce them. It's like, you're a freaking idiot for saying crap like that. That's
not happening.
100% agree. Yeah, that's dumb.
Yeah.
That's just.
Well, that can lead right into your next discussion, Pete, about living your life.
It's going to bring us right into the importance. You have to look at this. Why do we do this? Why do we prep? And that's to be prepared for emergencies, and we want to be prepared for emergencies because we want to what? We want to live, right? We want to get through life. We want to live to wake up tomorrow morning and see our kids or see our parents or hang out with our buddies or whatever. It's kind of disturbing, and this actually goes a little bit back to the Doomsday Prepper thing. There was one guy who stated he had quit doing all his hobbies and was making rabbit holes in the desert. That's what he did now. And that's sad. I mean, this might torque some people off, and I'm sorry, but I don't care if I torque you off, because you need to live your life. One of the first things I did on the group page, was I posted some music videos. It's like, enjoy some music. This is where I get my music from. Enjoy life. Go out and do things. Don't let prepping just totally overwhelm you, because you want to live your life. That's why you're doing this. And if you're going to go sit in a bunker on a mountainside, to me that's kind of like, why are you doing this? Because you're not enjoying the life you have, other than collecting MREs and counting bullets. And to me, that's
for something that very well could never happen.
Yeah, exactly. For something that's that most likely will, this fantasy major shit hits the fan thing that has never happened prior worldwide. Granted, wars and all that stuff happened.
It's maybe an asteroid a couple 100 million years ago, but
famine happens. Yeah, I mean, were the dinosaurs like in their cave with their MREs? No, they weren't. I read today where people don't travel on planes because they can't take their stuff with them, and that's. I understand taking some stuff, but to not plan a trip to wherever because you can't take your gun with you, I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive or stupid or whatever, but go out and live your life. Go do something. Go to a movie. Go to a play. Go to the library. It's disturbing that people sit at home and live in fear.
See,
I can understand if you live in Detroit or, unfortunately, Baltimore, and you live in a bad neighborhood. I understand that's a different thing. But if you live in Paducah, Kentucky, or Ames, Iowa, or anywhere in between and all over, and you're in constant fear, then you should go someplace else, for one thing.
I prep I don't have to worry, personally. If we lose power, I'm not worried. If we can't get out and get food, I'm not worried. So that's why I prep, so I don't have to be worried.
Well, I think it comes down to, like, really in the long and short, what you're saying probably goes with this. Even before a disaster or after disaster, I live by a simple theory. I don't want to survive. I want to thrive.
Oh, yeah.
Surviving sucks. It does. I've seen people who I wouldn't still call this in the world to survive, but they're hungry every single day. They don't have a real roof over their head. And you just look at them and it's like, man, they've had the life sucked out of them. And if you're preparing for a lot of the stuff that you said, those situations, those people are preparing to live that as the rest of their life, even before disaster strikes. That's just what they want to do. And once a disaster happens, it comes back to, like we were talking about earlier, you're not going to have the morale to push through any extra suck you might have. You got to thrive. You do. And right now, life's good for most people, and you should enjoy it. Go out and do the things that you want to have fun doing. Keep that morale up.
Yeah.
Be prepared if something crappy is going to happen. Have a backup plan.
And even just the mindset. You don't even have to have the stuff. I don't know. I've spent too much of my life working a lot, two jobs at a time, occasionally a third job at a time. And now that I'm getting older and I've experienced some more things, and I've done stuff all my life. I've traveled all my life, but there was a time where I didn't have a lot of fun, and it just sucked, and I worked constantly, and you need to get out and you need to do something, and you can't live in fear constantly because it brings you down and it destroys you from within. So getting out and doing something or having some friends, there's got to be someone out there for you to hang out with, even if it's online, talking, just chit-chatting with people online. So how do you feel about all that, Richard?
Okay, so I've said something about my grandfather before, big influence on me. He didn't call what he did prepping, but if you looked at his lifestyle coming out of the stock market crash, the 1929 crash, he would, in today's world, by practice, have been a prepper. He just didn't call it that. So for me, I bought some land and built a house because I wanted to be more in the country and not in an urban setting. And I did that before I decided I needed to do anything about prepping. So my day-to-day stuff that I enjoy is nearly prepping. So I try to incorporate those things in my life, and then I go do some of the other things you mentioned too, just to have a little bit of a balance to do that. I always tried to stay in shape. I was a competitive bodybuilder in one part of my life. I still try to stay in shape. So really, most of the things that we talk about, I was already doing. Now they just got a little bit more focus on them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what they call prepping nowadays is just the way you lived back in the day. You know, you had a garden and you canned and you could do things and you fixed stuff because it wasn't a throwaway society back then. You know.
That's right. That's right, and that's closer to homesteading or self-sustainable. But when you talk about 21st century prepping, I don't boycott technology in favor of draw knives and crosscut saws.
Yeah.
I like to have skills. Those skills, just if I need them, just because I enjoy them. But there's a good balance there between the combination of the things.
The main point I'm trying to make, and I think we're all trying to make, is just go out and live a life, whatever kind of life you want to choose, but make sure you don't cower in the corner which some people, it appears that that's what they do, because if you want to live a life, that's the life you're going to live even after something happens. So get out there, meet people, and enjoy what we have. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. Make sure you check us out on 21st Century Prepper on Facebook and at 21stcenturyprepper.net on the World Wide Web. Thank you.